Lucas sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, his heart racing as the weight of his secret pressed heavily on his chest. His reflection in the mirror showed a handsome young man, his dark hair tousled and his green eyes filled with anxiety. He had everything: looks, a promising career, and a beautiful girlfriend, Emma, whom he loved deeply. But there was one part of him he feared no one could ever accept. He was born with both male and female genitalia, a condition that had been his most guarded secret since childhood. His parents, the only people who knew the truth, had been supportive all his life, encouraging him to live fully despite his condition. But the fear of rejection had always kept him from opening up to anyone else. Now, as his relationship with Emma deepened, Lucas felt the pressure mounting. How could he ever marry her without telling her? The thought of losing her was unbearable. His hands trembled as he stared at the engagement ring he had bought just days ago. Could he truly go through with it? Or would the secret he had kept for so long destroy everything? Lucas met Emma at their favorite cafe for lunch, but his mind was far from the casual conversation they were having. She laughed, and her smile lit up the room as always, but today, Lucas could barely look her in the eyes. How could he continue to deceive the woman he loved so much? Every time she spoke about their future, about the family they'd have, his stomach twisted in knots. The lie he had been living was suffocating him. Emma was everything he had ever wanted: kind, compassionate, intelligent, and he couldn't imagine life without her. But the thought of telling her the truth terrified him. He feared she would see him as something less than a man, that her love would vanish in an instant. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking his thoughts. It was his mother checking in on him as she often did, sensing the tension in his life. "Have you told her yet?" she asked softly. "No, Mom, not yet," he whispered. I don't know how." That evening, Lucas found himself at his parents' house. His father, a man of few words, sat across from him in the living room, sipping his coffee. Lucas had always admired his father's quiet strength. When Lucas first came out to his parents about his condition, it had been his father's calm and steady response that had helped him cope. Tonight, he needed that strength more than ever. "You're thinking about telling her, aren't you?" his father asked, as if reading his mind. Lucas nodded, his throat tight. "I want to, but I'm scared. What if she leaves me? What if she can't accept this?" His father set down his cup and looked him in the eyes. "You can't build a life on secrets, son. If she truly loves you, she'll accept you for who you are. But you have to give her that chance." The words settled over Lucas like a heavy blanket. Deep down, he knew his father was right. But the fear of rejection still gnawed at him. Could love really overcome something so profound? Meanwhile, Emma had been dreaming of their future together. She had always envisioned a life with Lucas: marriage, children, and a home filled with laughter. She loved him deeply and believed that they were meant to be together. To her, Lucas was perfect in every way. She often wondered when he would finally propose. They had been dating for nearly 3 years, and it seemed like the next step was inevitable. But lately, she had sensed a distance in him that she couldn't quite explain. At night, when they were lying side by side, she could feel his tension, as if he were hiding something from her. Emma trusted Lucas, but his increasing silence had started to plant seeds of doubt in her mind. Did he not want the same future she did? Was there something he wasn't telling her? She decided to confront him soon. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, and if they were truly going to build a life together, they needed to be open with each other. Lucas had been avoiding the conversation for weeks, but he knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had rehearsed what he would say 100 times, yet every time he tried to bring it up, the words caught in his throat. Today, however, he had no choice. He had invited Emma over to his apartment for dinner, planning to finally propose to her. As she walked in, looking beautiful in her casual dress, Lucas's heart raced. They sat down to eat, but he barely touched his food. His hands were sweaty as he reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. Emma's eyes widened with surprise and joy as Lucas got down on one knee. Emma, I love you more than anything in this world. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me? Her face lit up, but just as she was about to say yes, Lucas hesitated. His heart pounded as he realized that if he didn't tell her the truth now, he might never have the courage to do so. He swallowed hard and said, "But before you answer, there's something I need to tell you." The moment Lucas had dreaded had finally arrived. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked up at Emma, who stood frozen in shock. She had just been on the verge of saying yes to his proposal, and now everything felt like it was crumbling. "What is it?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with concern. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling as though his entire world was about to shatter. "I've been hiding something from you," he began, his voice shaking. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Emma's brows furrowed as she listened, her eyes searching his face for answers. Lucas struggled to find the right words, but eventually he simply said it. "I was born with both male and female parts. It's a condition I've had all my life. Only my parents know, and now you do." Silence filled the room. Lucas couldn't bring himself to look at her, fearing the disgust or rejection that might be written on her face. Emma stood in stunned silence, trying to process what Lucas had just told her. She had never expected something like this, and her mind raced with questions. She had always thought she knew everything about him, but this revelation had completely blindsided her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she searched for the right words, but nothing came. Lucas, on the other hand, was filled with dread. He could see the confusion and shock in her eyes, and he feared the worst. "I understand if this changes everything," he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. Emma finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Lucas looked down, his hands trembling. "I was scared, Emma. I didn't want to lose you." The weight of the secret hung heavy between them, and Emma realized that this wasn't something she could process in a single conversation. "I need some time," she said softly, turning to leave. Lucas's heart broke as the door closed behind her. Days passed, and the silence between Lucas and Emma grew louder. She hadn't returned his calls or messages, and Lucas felt like he was drowning in uncertainty. He couldn't blame her for needing time. After all, it was a lot to take in. But the longer the silence stretched, the more he feared that their relationship was truly over. His parents tried to comfort him, reminding him that honesty was the only way forward, but Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he had lost the love of his life. Emma, on the other hand, was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She loved Lucas deeply, but his confession had shaken her to her core. She had so many questions, not just about his condition, but about their future. Could she accept him as he was? Could they still have the life they had always dreamed of? She didn't know the answers, but she knew she couldn't avoid him forever. Hey besties, I hope you're enjoying the story. Let's find out if Emma is going to accept Lucas or not. Let me know where you're watching from. With a heavy heart, she decided it was time to face Lucas and have the conversation they both needed. Emma arrived at Lucas's apartment unannounced, her heart pounding as she knocked on the door. Lucas opened it quickly, his eyes filled with both hope and fear. For a moment, they stood in awkward silence, neither knowing how to begin. Finally, Emma spoke. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside. Lucas nodded, closing the door behind her. He had been preparing himself for this moment, though nothing could ease the anxiety he felt. They sat down on the couch, the tension thick between them. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," Emma began. "It was a shock, and I needed time to process it. But I also realized that this doesn't change the person you are. You're still Lucas, the man I love." Lucas's breath caught in his throat. He had been bracing for rejection, but Emma's words were a glimmer of hope. "But," she continued, "I need to understand more about what this means for us. our future, our relationship. I'm willing to try, but we need to be completely open with each other from now on. Lucas felt a wave of relief wash over him as he listened to Emma's words. She hadn't rejected him outright, but he knew they still had a long road ahead of them. I'm willing to answer any questions you have, he said, his voice steady. I just want you to know that I never wanted to keep this from you. I was just scared. Emma nodded, understanding the fear that must have driven him to hide such a significant part of himself. They talked for hours, with Lucas explaining his condition in detail. He told her about the medical consultations he had undergone, the emotional struggles he had faced, and how his parents had supported him throughout. Emma listened carefully, her love for him fighting against her fears and uncertainties. She asked about their future, whether they could have children, what it would mean for their intimacy, and how they would handle telling others. Lucas didn't have all the answers, but he promised they would face everything together, one step at a time. Despite the uncertainty, they both knew this conversation was a crucial step toward rebuilding their relationship. In the days that followed, Emma and Lucas began to rebuild the trust between them, but it wasn't without difficulty. The weight of Lucas's confession still lingered in the air. Emma struggled with her own internal conflict. She loved Lucas, but the complexity of their relationship weighed heavily on her. One evening, as they sat on the couch together, Lucas reached for her hand. I know this isn't easy for you, he said softly. I've lived with this my whole life, and I've learned to cope. But I realize it's new for you. I don't want to pressure you into anything. Emma squeezed his hand, her voice filled with both love and uncertainty. I'm trying, Lucas. I want to be with you. I need to come to terms with everything, one step at a time. They sat in silence for a moment, both understanding that the road ahead would be long and challenging, but hopeful that their love would be strong enough to endure it. As Lucas and Emma worked through their relationship privately, Lucas found himself more isolated in his friendships. He had always been close with his co-workers and a few friends from college, but the secret he kept had made him feel like an outsider, even among those who didn't know about his condition. His best friend Josh had often asked him why he seemed so distant lately, but Lucas could never bring himself to share the truth. One afternoon, while grabbing lunch with Josh, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Man, you've been acting weird lately, Josh said, his tone light but curious. Is everything okay? Trouble with Emma? Lucas hesitated, unsure of how much he could share. It's complicated, he admitted. I'm going through something personal, and I haven't really talked about it with anyone. Josh raised an eyebrow. Well, I'm here if you ever need to talk. You know that. Lucas smiled weakly, grateful for the offer but unsure if he could ever truly open up. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it, Lucas said, deflecting the conversation. As they continued their lunch, Lucas realized how much his secret had separated him from the people closest to him. The weight of his condition not only affected his relationship with Emma, but had also created a barrier between him and his friends. Later that night, as he lay in bed next to Emma, Lucas thought about what his father had said. You can't build a life on secrets. He knew that the longer he kept this part of himself hidden from everyone else, the more distant he would feel. But telling the truth wasn't just about his friends, it was about fully accepting who he was, and that was something Lucas wasn't sure he was ready for yet. Emma had been trying her best to support Lucas, but deep down, doubts continued to creep into her mind. She had never imagined her life taking such a turn, and while she loved Lucas, the complexity of their relationship weighed heavily on her. One night, as they lay in bed, Emma found herself wide awake, staring at the ceiling. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, she whispered, her voice breaking the silence. Lucas, who had been lying quietly beside her, turned to face her. You don't have to do this alone, Emma, he said gently. I'm here and we'll figure this out together. Emma sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. But what if I can't? What if I'm not the person who can handle this? The vulnerability in her voice cut through Lucas, and for the first time, he realized just how much his condition was affecting her. Lucas reached out to hold her hand. I love you, Emma. That's all I know for sure, but I don't want you to stay if it's going to break you. Emma looked at him, her heart torn between love and fear. She didn't want to lose him, but she also didn't know if she had the strength to face all that was ahead. For the first time, the possibility of losing Lucas became real, and that scared her more than anything. The following morning, Lucas awoke to the sound of Emma moving around the apartment. She had risen early, her mind still clouded by doubts, but determined to find clarity. She spent the morning reading articles and seeking out information on Lucas's condition, trying to understand what life might look like for them moving forward. The more she read, the more she realized that their journey would be difficult, but not impossible. There were stories of couples who had overcome similar challenges, and their resilience inspired her. By the time Lucas woke up, Emma had already made up her mind. She would give their relationship a real chance, but it had to be built on absolute honesty and understanding. When Lucas came into the kitchen, she greeted him with a soft smile. I've been doing some research, she said, placing her hand on his arm. And I want to try. I want us to work, Lucas. But we have to be completely open with each other. No more secrets, no more hiding. Lucas's heart swelled with relief and gratitude. I promise no more hiding, he said, pulling her into a tight embrace. For the first time in weeks, they both felt like they were on the same page again. With their new commitment to honesty, Lucas and Emma began to talk more openly about their future. They discussed everything: intimacy, children, and how they would navigate their relationship in the public eye. They knew that the world might not always be kind to them, but they were determined to stand by each other through it all. Lucas also began seeing a therapist who helped him unpack the emotional toll his condition had taken on him over the years. Emma joined him for a few sessions where they learned how to communicate better and support each other in a healthy way. The therapy sessions became a turning point in their relationship, helping them to rebuild the trust and intimacy that had been fractured by Lucas's secret. Slowly but surely, they began to feel like a team again, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Lucas and Emma continued to heal and strengthen their relationship, the topic of marriage resurfaced. Lucas still had the engagement ring, and though Emma hadn't officially said yes, the conversation about their future had grown more serious. They both wanted to be together, but Lucas couldn't shake the fear that their wedding day would be tainted by the weight of his secret. Do you think we should tell people? Lucas asked one evening as they discussed wedding plans. About my condition, I mean. I don't want to start our marriage with any more secrets, but I also don't know if I'm ready for the world to know. Emma thought for a moment, understanding his hesitation. I don't think we need to tell everyone, she said carefully, but maybe the people closest to us, the ones who love and support us no matter what. We don't owe anyone an explanation, but we do owe ourselves the chance to be honest with the people who matter. Lucas nodded, grateful for her wisdom. They decided that when the time was right, they would confide in their closest friends and family, knowing that their journey would be met with love and acceptance. Lucas knew that the first person he needed to tell was Josh. They had been best friends since childhood, and keeping such a major part of his life hidden from him had always felt wrong. One weekend, Lucas invited Josh over for a few beers, and as they sat on the balcony of Lucas's apartment, the conversation turned serious. Josh, there's something I've been keeping from you for a long time, Lucas began, his voice steady but nervous. It's personal, and it's not easy for me to talk about, but I need you to know. Josh frowned, clearly concerned. What is it, man? You know you can tell me anything. Lucas took a deep breath and explained everything, his condition, his fears, and why he had kept it a secret for so long. Josh listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Lucas finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Josh spoke. Lucas, you're my brother. Nothing changes that. I don't care what anyone else says or thinks. You're still the same guy I've known all these years, and I'll always have your back. Relief washed over Lucas, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly seen and accepted by someone outside of his family. It was a small step, but it meant everything. With Josh's support behind him, Lucas felt more confident about sharing his truth with the people closest to him. Emma stood by his side as they told her parents, who, to Lucas's surprise, reacted with compassion and understanding. "We love you, Lucas," Emma's mother had said, "and we're proud of the person you are. That's all that matters to us." Lucas's family had always known, but hearing Emma's parents accept him so fully lifted a weight off his shoulders. Their journey wasn't over, but Lucas finally felt like he could move forward without the shadow of his secret looming over him. Together they continued to plan their future, confident that love would guide them through the obstacles ahead. With the support of their families and friends, Lucas felt ready to propose to Emma again, this time without the burden of secrets hanging over him. One evening, he took Emma to the place where they had first met, a cozy little cafe downtown. They reminisced about their early days together, laughing about the awkward moments and the memories they had shared. As the evening came to a close, Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. "Emma, I love you more than I can put into words. You've stood by me through everything, and I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. Will you marry me?" This time there was no hesitation. Emma smiled through tears and said, "Yes, Lucas, 1,000 times yes." Their future was still uncertain, but for the first time they both felt ready to face it together, honestly and without fear. The day of their wedding arrived, and though Lucas had been nervous about how it would feel, he couldn't have been happier. Surrounded by their closest friends and family, Lucas and Emma exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever challenges life might throw their way. As they stood together, hand in hand, Lucas realized that he had finally found peace, not just with Emma, but with himself. His condition was a part of who he was, but it didn't define him. He had learned that love, trust, and acceptance could overcome even the deepest fears, and that the people who truly cared about him would love him unconditionally. After the wedding, Lucas and Emma settled into married life, navigating the ups and downs that every couple faces. They continued to be open with each other, communicating honestly about their needs and fears. There were still challenges, moments when Lucas's condition brought about difficult conversations or new uncertainties, but they faced them together with patience and understanding. Lucas also continued therapy, working through the emotional scars of keeping his secret for so long. It wasn't always easy, but he was learning to love and accept himself in ways he had never thought possible. With Emma by his side, Lucas no longer felt the weight of his secret. He was no longer ashamed of who he was, and that inner peace became the foundation for their marriage. Months passed, and Lucas and Emma began to discuss the possibility of starting a family. The topic wasn't easy. It brought with it questions about fertility, adoption, and what kind of future they wanted to build. But they approached it the same way they had learned to approach everything else, with honesty and openness. After consulting with doctors, they realized that biological children might not be an option. While it was a difficult realization, they both agreed that love, not biology, defined a family. They began the process of exploring adoption, excited to grow their family in a way that felt right for them. The journey wasn't without its challenges, but they felt stronger together, having overcome so much already. As they navigated the adoption process, Lucas and Emma grew even closer. They attended workshops, met with adoption counselors, and began to dream about the day they would bring a child into their home. For Lucas, this process was a profound experience. It was another reminder that his worth wasn't tied to societal expectations. and that his ability to love and be loved transcended his physical condition. When they were finally matched with a child, Lucas and Emma's joy was boundless. They welcomed a little girl into their lives, and in her they found a new kind of love, one that deepened their bond as a couple and made them more certain than ever that they were meant to be together. Years passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Lucas and Emma found joy in the everyday moments, raising their daughter, navigating their careers, and growing as individuals and as partners. Lucas no longer feared his secret or the judgment of others. He was confident in who he was, knowing that those who truly mattered had accepted him completely. There were still challenges, of course. There always would be. But Lucas had learned that love and acceptance were more powerful than fear. With Emma, their daughter, and their close-knit circle of family and friends, Lucas had built a life full of meaning, one where he could be his true self. As Lucas and Emma grew older, they reflected on how far they had come. Emma's unwavering support had been the bedrock of their relationship, and Lucas never took it for granted. She had chosen to embrace his truth, and in doing so, she had helped him embrace it too. They often talked about the early days of their relationship, remembering the fears they once had. Now those fears seemed distant, like shadows that had long since faded. Emma's love had not only transformed Lucas's life, but had also shown him the power of vulnerability and trust. Over time, Lucas found the courage to share his story with more people. He became involved in support groups and advocacy for people with conditions like his, helping others find the strength to accept themselves. Through these new connections, Lucas formed deep friendships with people who understood his journey on a personal level. It was through these relationships that Lucas realized his story could make a difference in others' lives. He began speaking at events and sharing his experiences, helping to break down the stigma surrounding people with intersex conditions. In doing so, Lucas found a renewed sense of purpose, one that extended beyond himself and his own life. Lucas and Emma's daughter grew up in a home filled with love and acceptance. They were open with her about Lucas's condition, teaching her that people come in many different forms and that love is the only thing that truly matters. Their daughter, wise beyond her years, never saw her father as anything less than whole. As a family, they faced the world together, knowing that the strength of their bond was unshakable. Lucas often marveled at how far he had come, from the young man terrified of losing the woman he loved, to a husband and father who had built a life of truth, love, and resilience. Lucas's journey had taught him one profound lesson: living in truth is the only way to find peace. For so many years, he had been afraid of what others would think, of how his condition might define him. But in the end, it was his honesty, both with himself and with those he loved, that had set him free. He had learned that love was stronger than fear and that the people who truly mattered would accept him for who he was. Emma's love had been the catalyst for his transformation, but it was Lucas's own courage that had carried him through. The truth, once a source of shame, had become his greatest source of strength. As Lucas looked back on his life, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had faced his deepest fears and come out stronger on the other side. He had found a love that was unconditional, built a family that accepted him fully, and discovered a community of people who understood his journey. For Lucas, life was no longer about hiding. It was about living openly and authentically. He had learned that the greatest gift he could give himself and those he loved was the truth. And in doing so, he had found a happiness and peace that he had once thought impossible. The story of Lucas and Emma is one of love, courage, and the power of truth. Through their journey, they learned that true love can withstand even the greatest challenges, but only when it is built on honesty and acceptance. Lucas's condition, once a source of shame, became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the strength that comes from embracing one's true self. The moral of their story is clear. No matter what we face in life, we must live authentically, for only in truth can we find real peace. Love, when it is true, does not demand perfection. It demands honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to accept others as they are. In the end, it is not our differences that define us, but the love and acceptance we give and receive.